Hey, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's Community News back for another important news vlog. Well, after months of deliberation, well, guess what? The Breonna Taylor, the case like that, we're going to get to that in a minute. Wonder what happened, all like that. But 6 people arrested and vandalism reported at Seattle's Breonna Taylor protest. People have been protesting all over in the country, not just Seattle, but many cities and states as well. Let's get to it. The decision not to prosecute the officers involved in the killing of Breonna Taylor triggered outrage among several protest groups in Seattle and eventually multiple arrests. A group outside the federal courthouse on Stewart Street held a candlelight vigil and remained peaceful. A separate group took the streets and really left its mark. As the demonstrators moved through Capitol Hill and downtown, they smashed windows and spray-painted buildings. Sometimes while chanting Breonna Taylor's name, it escalated into some violent clashes with police. Roughly 200 people were on the move when officers declared the march, and the lawful assembly ordered the crowd to disperse. That's when the arrests began. Police said they took 6 people into custody during the initial demonstration. Many of the officers returned to Cal Anderson's Park, where the march had started. Police said they started throwing fireworks at the East Precinct to try to cut the lines through the surveillance cameras. Como News spoke to one activist ahead of time who wasn't directly involved in the marches but had been organized protests throughout the summer. David Lewis said the Taylor case shows that the standards in prosecute officers is too high. He added that the police union contract in Seattle is deeply flawed because officers receive qualified immunity. I repeat that, ladies and gentlemen. Qualified immunity. That's what the police officers in this country are. They are like that. Qualified immunity. They get away with shit. They get away with fucking murder, rape, and they steal money and drugs. All right, back to the story. And too many of them get away with murder. That's why Eric Brand says it best. Blue lives murder. And they do. Until we end things like qualified immunity and actually modify the CBA, collective bargaining agreement, so that officers who have shot someone and have multiple charges against them can't just appeal and come back to SPD. There is no change, Lewis said. Ann Bremer, a trial attorney and legal analyst, said Taylor's killing is a tragedy that inflamed the nation. However, Bremer said the facts in the case made very available by the grand jury investigation are nothing like the original reports that claimed officers burst in the apartment and shot Taylor in bed. If the facts are as presented today from the report, didn't you have officers acting in self-defense? And oftentimes the state has to prove the absence of self-defense beyond reasonable doubt, Bremer said. Yeah, it's freaking crazy. Yeah, and here's the thing before I play this video. You know, and a lot of people were tweeting about that, especially LeBron James. He said, yeah, there's justice for the neighbor's wall, but where's the justice for Taylor? There is no justice. It's a freaking sad day in the United States. It's just like opening a wound over the George Taylor. Yeah, you know, the same guy who said, I can't breathe, but they killed him. Yeah, and it's like, you know, and the officers who get up, you know, get license like Amber Geiger, Roy Oliver. Come on. It's asinine.
Breaking down on our live feeds at 11, we're tracking protests happening across the country and the shooting of 2 police officers in Louisville, Kentucky, which we first brought you as breaking news on Como News at 6. Right now, you're looking at Seattle and Los Angeles. People taking to the street after a grand jury decided not to bring any charges directly related to the shooting death of Breonna Taylor in Louisville, Kentucky. We've been watching 2 large groups of protesters march through Seattle tonight. In one case, police declaring an unlawful gathering. And we just learned officers made 6 arrests at least. Now, just minutes ago, Seattle police tweeted that protesters are throwing fireworks at the East Precinct in Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood, nearly striking officers in the process. Joel Moreno will have a live update in just a minute.
First, 2 Louisville police officers were shot as the city is roiled in protests after today's charging decision. The police chief said the officers were responding to reports of gunfire and were shot, but it's still unclear if the shooting was related to the active protests. Both officers are
Fuck the police.
Police say one suspect is in custody. And today a grand jury indicted just one of the 3 Louisville officers involved in the March drug raid and shooting that killed Breonna Taylor. Former officer Brett Hinkison is charged with 3 counts of wanton endangerment. He's accused of endangering the lives of the people in neighboring apartments. The state attorney general says Hankerson did not fire any of the shots that hit Taylor. The 2 other officers involved in the shooting were found to be justified in their use of force because Taylor's
Fucking
boyfriend
pigs.
shot at them first.
Today's decision outraging protesters calling for justice for Breonna Taylor. KOMO's Joel Moreno has been watching the marches. He is live tonight in Seattle. And Joel, what are you seeing out there tonight?
Well, Preston, we've really seen a range of responses depending on which group that we've been with. Now, here at the federal courthouse, there was a candlelight vigil and a peaceful gathering of about 100 people. They are gone now, but you can see what they put out here. Now, there was another group, though, that really left its mark. They marched through the streets. We saw windows being smashed, sides of buildings spray painted, and at least half a dozen people being detained. Now, the anger just erupted tonight as protesters headed out of Cal Anderson Park, shouting Breonna Taylor's name and demanding justice for black lives. As they rolled through the neighborhoods, we saw people bashing out windows, tagging storefronts with graffiti, and a slew of other property damage. At least a couple of hundred people were on the move when police declared the march an unlawful assembly and ordered them all to disperse. That is when we saw several protesters being taken into custody. The group was just a little too hostile for us to try to safely interview anyone, but we did speak to one activist virtually beforehand who says the standard to prosecute officers is just too high. And the police union contract here in Seattle that grants them qualified immunity, well, he says that is letting them get away with murder.
Until we end things like qualified immunity and actually modify the CBAs so that officers who have shot someone and have multiple charges against them can't just appeal and come back to the SPD, there's no change.
Well, a legal expert says Taylor's killing is a tragedy that inflamed the nation. However, she says that the facts in the case made available by the grand jury investigation today, it's nothing like the original reports that said that the officers burst into the apartment and shot Taylor in bed.
But if the facts are as they're presented today from their report, then you've got officers acting in self-defense. And oftentimes the state has to prove the absence of self-defense beyond a reasonable doubt.
Jesus Christ. It's the old adjective that cops are saying, oh, self-defense, oh, I was feared for my life. Come on.
Police, however, say
That fucking record's getting old.
You mentioned, Preston, that they did arrest 6 people. One was for assaulting an officer, we're told. The others were for rendering criminal assistance or obstruction. Back to you.
And we know things are getting pretty out of hand right now at the East Precinct tonight, Joel, too. We're keeping an eye on that. Meantime, we're asking you to weigh in tonight in a Twitter poll. We're asking if you agree with the grand jury's charging decision in the Breonna Taylor shooting investigation. So far, 42% say yes, they agree. 58% say no, they don't. You can still vote on our KOMO News Twitter page. And an update on Capitol Hill now. SPD tweeting that they deployed pepper spray at the protesters throwing fireworks at the East Precinct. This is what I was just talking about. That group has now moved to Cal Anderson Park. We will keep a close eye on this, let you know of any developments as they pop up here on the news.
Like I said, just another case. Yep, Blue Lives Murder, son of bear back the blue. Freaking scumbag cops out there. Absolutely asinine. Asinine. Asa 10. Asa 20.